Hi, I'm Ben.
And I'm Zach.
Oh, we're back to not using our last names. That's
Stanhope.
okay. And Leewald. You get to guess who's who. So today on the podcast, I don't know whether this is how we should start the show. I think we're going to start it with social media plugs and stuff now. So, like, obviously you're in the movie vault right now at this point, and I've accidentally pulled up my Spanish, not my chemistry homework. I don't even take Spanish. So if you want to contact us at all, and you want to get in to the vault, then you just need to email us at themovievault@gmail.com or DM us at themovievault, which we're at 97 followers. We're 3 from 100. So get your friends to follow us on Instagram.
Last time I checked, we were at like 50.
Yeah, so we're gaining some popularity. You know, things are picking up slowly but surely.
Yes, sure.
And we're also like 130 away from 2,000 total listens. So like, share us on your social media or just by word of mouth. Probably word of mouth.
I didn't know that either. I should really check up on these things.
Yeah, I am completely dedicated to making sure I know all this information. And then let's see, the Twitter is @MovieVaultPod. So, and that's run by Anna, and she usually does a pretty good job of keeping it interesting, way better than I could do.
She got us retweeted by the director of Killer Sofa.
Yes, shout out to Bernie Rayo.
Yes,
we are a big fan, and don't take it too personally that we might not have given you the highest rating. Our movie rating scale is not completely fair, but
it is. No.
But it is at the same time.
According to us, we are always right.
We agree to the extent that it helps us be successful, and then we disagree when it stops helping us be successful.
So that we're always right,
taking
the middle ground.
Which is sort of like what this movie is about, and I'll explain it maybe, or maybe I won't. We'll see whether I get into
start.
This. So this movie that we're reviewing is Heathers, and I do want to say before we get too far into the episode, if you are a younger listener, this might not be
explicit.
the episode or the movie that you want to watch, because it deals with some rather shocking sequences of events, and in general, it's as a dark comedy, it is intentionally sort of provocative, I guess.
Violence, greed.
Yeah, I would say. In more ways, it's slightly graphically violent, but it's mostly just the language that's provocative, I would say, in this movie.
Profanity.
But even so, I just want to issue that warning. But the director of this movie was Michael Lemmon, who I think it's like Lemon or Lehman, something like that. And he hasn't really directed a whole lot. This was his first directorial movie, and I think it was written by this like guy named Roger Waters. I will double check that because Daniel Waters. I believe Roger Waters is the lead singer of Pink Floyd. But this movie was not exactly a success, as it grossed $1.1 million on a $3 million budget. But it does have a Rotten Tomatoes score of 93%. So this movie came out right at the time that the production company was going out of business, and that caused it to be not very successful. I think it only spent like 5 weeks in movie theaters. So that was kind of unfortunate, but it did pick up a cult classic status. And Zach, what did you think of this movie?
Well, this is Breaking Bad in high school.
Yeah, essentially. I mean, there's also shades of the Joker, I would say too.
Yeah.
So imagine a combination of those things. Now, botch, watch, or top notch?
Ooh, I would give this one a watch.
Yeah, I really, really love this movie. It's in my top 10. I'm going to say that right off the bat. But I'm not giving this a top notch. It doesn't fit the requirements. This would be a top notch for certain crowds of people who like certain styles of movie. But that really only puts it in the watch territory. It has to be for everyone to get to top notch.
You're eating McDonald's fries. There's a really, really big salty fry, and you eat it. And it's great, but it's not the definition of a great fry, is it? It's a good treat, but it's not the definition.
Yeah, it's interesting, but maybe not the best, for everybody. Maybe for somebody it's just a little too salty, a little too flavorful.
In fact, when you know how some people are very into coffee and stuff, like myself. A lot of people don't like very bitter things, but bitter becomes a taste for some people, like dark comedies, I'd say.
Yeah.
So dark humor is something that's only in a certain type of person. Like only certain people like bitter foods or drinks. So I think that's just kind of how this goes as well for this movie.
Yeah, and that makes complete sense. So now I will try to explain the plot of this movie. It's not actually real complicated, but it is shown in a way that is a little bit confusing because it definitely draws into some surrealist elements. There's definitely parts of the movie that you're like, wait, is this real? And then you could even question whether the whole thing's real at the end. I think that it's not necessarily intended to be like completely surrealist, but it definitely draws from those elements. So our protagonist is Veronica, who's in a clique with 3 other Heathers. They're generally known by the school as the Heathers, and that's Heather Duke, Heather McNamara, and Heather Chandler. Heather Chandler's the original bad Heather. Veronica is going to a party at a college, which is supposedly the cool, sort of initiative into this clique with Heather Chandler. But before she does this, she meets this guy named JD, who happens to pull a blank gun on 2 bullies at the school. So what he does is they come over and sort of give him a hard time because he's sort of an eccentric guy. He's wearing like a leather trench coat or something, and he has earrings. He looks a little odd, but he's talking to Veronica, so they're a little bit jealous of that. And they come over, give him a hard time, and he pulls this gun on them, and just like, it's shocking. You think that they're dead at first, but they're not. We find out at the croquet match with the Heathers, which they play croquet throughout this film, which I think is sort of like a critique. It's supposed to like exaggerate the like sort of upper middle class flair that
we wouldn't know that
the Heathers experienced. Yeah, when I play croquet, which I have played croquet with my family, it does not look this fancy. This croquet set in this backyard looked like fancier, like it was like
croquet like golf almost. I just swing for it.
Yeah, so that is the odd thing. Anyway, JD and Veronica end up getting together after the party goes terribly wrong. This other guy just asks like a complete douchebag, for lack of a better words, to both of them. There's 2 guys, but Heather Chandler is willing to accept this behavior in order to lift her social status up. But Veronica is a little bit more jaded, and she certainly is not approving of this behavior, and so she throws up more as a way to get out of the party. And then JD convinces her to try to in the morning to try to give Heather Chandler a concoction that will make her throw up too. But what she doesn't know is that he switches out, sort of by accident, but mostly on purpose, the drink that was like some sort of weird concoction with, I believe it's like toilet bowl cleaner or something.
Something that will kill if you drink it.
And she does drink it, and she dies. And then they decide, after much moments of panic, although I doubt JD was as panicked as Veronica was, that they need to make a suicide note in Heather Chandler's handwriting so that it is believed to be a suicide. What they don't count on it, however, is that the suicide actually emphasizes the popularity of Heather Chandler. And so they go to this funeral, everyone's there, it's very sad. The teachers are arguing over, how Heather Chandler's death should be celebrated, but in mostly trivial, not celebrated. I said celebrated, but that sort of seemed like what they were doing. It sort of seemed like they were celebrating it, even though they were supposed to be mourning it. But everyone was trying to take advantage of the moment, which is sort of the social criticism of this movie. Like, how is teenage suicide used to the advantage of, media, the school, to gain attention by the other students to, act like they were great friends with this person and they were really close.
This was the part of the movie where I started to realize it's like a satire on actual like world events that take place. Like a teen committing suicide, that's a serious thing, and then you do see people out there that like would take advantage of it and like do it for the view, like talk about something for the views, or like what was the movie that we were watching where someone died? It was in Searching.
Searching was sort of like this.
And the girl the girl goes missing and they think she's dead, and then someone who said that they didn't even know her pretends to be her best friend just for like the views on YouTube, or not YouTube, whatever that streaming thing was. But it's just like taking advantage of someone else's misfortune is something, especially like suicide, and especially suicides from teens, like a super serious thing. And like people out there do that, so like they're really being satirical about it to like show the serious problem about it. Which of course, like maybe the main focus of the movie isn't to shed light on these problems, but like to acknowledge that they exist, maybe.
Yeah, and we see more fake suicides happen after this. The next one is with Kurt and Ram, who are football players. Kurt, they take Heather, I believe it's Heather Duke. No, it's not Heather Duke. It's Heather McNamara and Veronica on a double date, and they act, just terribly. They are not gentlemanly at all. They're the exact opposite of that. And so JD, looking down on them, who he sort of stalks like this event, and he says, and he hangs out with her, and eventually he plants this idea that, hey, we should get him back for like spreading these rumors around about what happened on this date. We need to use these fake bullets that will totally not kill them, and then frame them as being lovers, which will, since they're football players, would be supposedly worse for them. What ends up happening is they kill them. Yep. Obviously. There were no fake bullets involved. Veronica was fooled, although JD argues that she really knew what was going on the whole time. And at the funeral, everybody ends up embracing the situation instead of, as Veronica would have originally thought, it being like a laughing stock. But now, instead, everybody is mourning and celebrating around this event that they thought would be a huge embarrassment to the community. So everything seems to be going the opposite of what Veronica thinks, but JD seems shockingly content with the outcomes of these situations. But it takes Winona Ryder, who plays Veronica, I should say.
And she plays the mom from Stranger Things.
Yes, so you might recognize her. It takes her like 3 murders to finally decide that she's done with this guy, which makes me question her judgment a little bit. 1 fake death seems like it should be enough, but I guess he sold that off as a true accident.
But then 2 other people died, and she's still like, I don't know.
She's like, I don't know. And then she says, they're like sitting on the couch, and he says something to her, and that's what makes him. I forget exactly what the line is.
Well, he's like, he wants to blow up the school or something.
Yeah, and then she's like, this is too far. No, I think it was something less trivial than that, or less, not trivial. That's not trivial. Less intense. Like, I forget. He said
us movie podcasters.
Yeah, I should remember this.
Watched.
But the blowing up of the school does come into effect, and I will acknowledge this movie considering the events that have happened in the history of our country after this movie. This movie would probably not exist, and is probably
outdated,
a bit outdated, and like a little bit
insensitive.
Well, yeah, I would say insensitive, but it didn't know it was.
I'll let you talk.
It didn't know it was being insensitive. It's sort of prophetic, although I would say that the way that they portray these sort of violent acts is not how they would have happened in real life. But in no way would this movie be made in the way it was today, and I think that's okay. Like, I think that's this being a 1989 movie is the perfect time for them to have made this movie, and there's not really a reason that we need to make a movie like this today, per se, is what I would say about that. And that obviously if people have had experiences that this movie would cause them to be, traumatized, like, it's not the movie that you should see. It probably won't help comfort anybody because it's very cynical.
Again, it's a very dark comedy. So
yes.
Especially there are dark comedies out there that make fun of dark things, but there are very real dark situations that maybe weren't as prevalent back then that are addressed in this movie that could be more sensitive to viewers in these times.
Yeah, so we just want to acknowledge that, knowing that some people won't like this movie because of that, and that's completely fine. But there's another killing of Heather Duke this time, eventually, and this is where she sort of goes to this thing where Veronica fakes her suicide. Oh, and another important part, I should say, there's this character called Martha Dunstock, who's nicknamed Martha Dumbstruck. She is a rather large girl who gets made fun of and is ostracized by the school. She tries to attempt suicide and fails, so she ends up getting made fun of because she couldn't succeed in what the popular kids do.
So it all just goes back to like whether or not you were popular before, because anybody like they all went through the same thing, right? Like,
yeah,
people are dying, right?
And everyone is depressed, even the popular people. I think that's what this movie shows. Even the people who are popular were actually miserable. Veronica is obviously miserable the whole movie. Heather Chandler is completely miserable and disgusted with herself at the college party, at some of the actions she partakes in, which they show. They show how, like, she spits that thing in her at the mirror at herself. Like, she can't believe herself, and yet she keeps doing it because she she thinks that this is what I need to do to be popular, and that might be the critique, is that is what she needs to do to be popular, but it's not bringing her happiness. It's only bringing her power and popularity.
Yeah, like even Martha Dump Truck. Like everybody's going through the same thing. People are dying. People are getting made fun of. But they come back to the school, whether or not they're dead or alive or tried to attempt suicide or something like that. The social roles are still there. So like Heather is still remembered as the super popular girl. The football characters that were supposed to be like made fun of in their deaths are still cool. And then like Martha Dump Truck, who tried to attempt suicide but failed, is still at the bottom of the food chain. So it just goes to show that like teenagers look at social cues and social hierarchies more than they look at life and death.
Yeah,
sometimes.
Yeah, that is like sort of one of the central emphasis of the movie. And I think we're going a little longer on our plot review than we normally do, but I think it's because you have to take time to sort of analyze the different sections of this movie, because it's not like a movie that's intended to be just sort of like a straightforward plot. You have to understand the reasons for why things are happening, because the temptation of this movie is to just look at it for how shocking it is.
Yes, most people would be listening to this podcast and be like, wait, why aren't they talking about the funny parts yet? Because there is a lot of satire and humor in this movie, whether or not it's insensitive or not. It's just how this movie is portrayed to acknowledge those themes.
Yeah, and this will be the argument for that. Some people probably don't understand dark comedy because they're like, why do we need to resort to these sort of like things that tend not to be talked about, that are serious in like a lighthearted manner. But there is an argument to be made that comedy can oftentimes draw the power out of dark subjects. So that's what I've often heard as people who are either people who dabble in dark comedy or comedians who talk about dark subjects. This would be their argument. Now, obviously, there's periods where a tragedy has happened, and it is very inappropriate to joke about that tragedy immediately after.
Yeah, but that would have been said about the Titanic. Now all of a sudden we're hearing Titanic jokes all the time.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There is a certain time that passes, and now we have to deal with the fact that this happened, but we can't give that idea too much power, otherwise it will be used to inspire more evil. Like I think that's sort of, and this movie wasn't even written at a time that school shootings or these tragedies that have happened were even common. There had been a few mass shootings in the United States, I think, but nothing exactly like this. And the end of the movie involves a scene where JD is trying to blow up the school, and he is confronted by Veronica, who eventually stops him. And then he, spoiler alert, we've spoiled like the entire movie, instead of blowing up the school, blows up himself. And it's not very gory. Like if this was a Tarantino movie, there would be blood and guts everywhere, but there's not, so don't worry about that. And the school, they are, they show like the pep rally, and sort of like there's some satire going on there, I think. But then this Veronica's like, I need to change, and she takes over, the symbolic ribbon of power from Heather Duke, and she puts it on herself and is like, I run the school now, and I decide that I'm going to go be friends with Martha Dunstock instead of, going to the prom and doing things that would traditionally make me popular, because this is what I've learned. Although, obviously people will be like, well, she killed like 4 people and she's not having consequences. That's not entirely the point of this movie. It's not a crime thriller. They're not trying to find the murderers.
Just think of every scene as like a new experience.
Yeah.
Because they address a lot of different issues, a lot of different things in this movie. So.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think one of the main themes again was like mental health of students. Like everybody was depressed,
or
like,
the exploitation of mental health.
That too, yeah. I think that was definitely an aspect. But even like, JD, like you could tell his character like there was never a time in the movie where he didn't have a smile on his face. He was killing people, he was having fun. Even when he was getting yelled at by Veronica, like he knew, like he didn't really care. Like,
he has a masochistic like strain to him, although not too much, because he obviously. No, he does. At the end of the movie, he definitely shows that. Like he wants bad things to happen, even to the extent that they happen to him. And like I said, I don't think his his variation of mental illness is probably not how mental illness in real life works. It's more to make the movie interesting. But there's shades of the Joker because of the way he interacts, how much he loves chaos.
Yeah,
He's an
just
agent.
want to see the world burn.
Yeah, he's an agent of chaos. Like the Joker or Javier Bardem in No Country for Old Men. So that was an agent of chaos. But and in those movies, they are both funny too. So that you could say that they drew off of this character. I mean, maybe Javier Bardem is not quite as funny, but he makes jokes and they are funny. So watch No Country for Old Men. But before we go any further, I think there's really no way to lead into our commercial. So I'm just going to say you should get insurance because it's smart and it's the right thing to do.
And it's required for most things.
Yes. It's required for your car, your home, your business. So if you want to get insurance and you need insurance, or you want to save money on insurance because you're getting ripped off by the company who currently insures you, then we would suggest you go to Hedman Anglin Agency and call 614-486-7300. That's 614-486-7300. And if you do contact them, make sure to tell them that we from the Movie Vault sent you. And
and you know what? Just be friends with them. They'll be happy to be friends with you.
Yes.
They're very friendly.
They are very friendly, and they want to save you money, and they want to create a meaningful relationship with you, which you can't say of every insurance company.
Yeah, in fact, you can say it of none except them. I'm gonna say it, Ben. None of them.
None of them. The highest level of customer service only.
Yes, CS award goes to them.
I agree.
Okay.
Now we'll go over to our friend Roger Ebert, who we aspire to be. Just kidding. I will never pretend to have the same level of intelligence that Roger Ebert had.
This is a movie critic that we can actually give credit to. He was pretty cool, I think. Right?
Yeah. He's one of the most well-known movie critics. He had a show with Siskel and Ebert, and then I think Roper and Ebert. That was, he's pretty highly revered in the movie community. He did it for a long time, and he passed away not too long ago. But I think he was in it since the late '60s, and he was a big player in movie criticism. So he said about this movie,
movie criticism, such a culture.
For a long time, we're not even sure of the point of view. Is this a black comedy about murder or just a cynical morality play? The traveler in the foreign country is not sure, but he knows the film inspires thought. 2.5 out of 5, which isn't exactly a negative review, but it's also not a positive review.
I mean, it's a 50% out of his scoring.
Yeah.
So
on
the Movie Vault, that's a good score.
Roger was a bit confused maybe about what the exact point of this movie, but I think the point he's making is that the point is unclear, but that's sort of what the point of the movie is. The travelers trying to understand this weird and strange world of Sherwood, Ohio, which we're from Ohio, so we can really relate to all of the Ohio
humor. You should go
humor.
visit Sherwood and go to that exact school.
I'm pretty sure Sherwood is not real.
That makes me sad.
We should invent Sherwood, Ohio.
The Movie Vault is located in Sherwood, Ohio.
If you were wondering where in Ohio we are in Sherwood.
Yes.
That's why we did this movie.
It's like The Simpsons, like Springfield. But they don't specify which state.
Because there's a lot of Springfields. Is that the point of that?
No, people in the show, they don't specify which state. So that's like an ongoing joke. Like, which state are they in? And they always hint to it. And there's one scene where they go on the Springfield Mountain and they look around and it's like Texas, Kansas, Arkansas, and Maine. It's like, so those are the 4 states surrounding it.
So they're like,
just to throw people off.
And then there's people who are obviously taking it so seriously that they're like, okay, it's Springfield, Missouri, because Missouri's close to Arkansas and sort of close to Texas and Kansas.
The biggest theory is Oregon right now.
Oregon, which is weird because that's not even close to any of those.
Gravity Falls is a place in Oregon.
Well, that makes sense.
So
Falls.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess we should go to our scores. I'm just gonna lead off right away with sentiment and say this is a 10 for me. Which this is just, I like dark comedies that are executed well, and I feel like this was executed very well. It's one of my favorite movies in my top 10. I think currently at 6th. Might go down a little, might go up a little. It went up a little recently because I was just like, I made my ranking more based on how much I liked movies instead of I want to figure out what the best movie is, how the movie made me feel truly. And this is it was super interesting. I almost shut it off the first time I started watching it because the first scene was so bizarre, but I'm glad I kept watching it and gave it a chance.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have watched past the first couple of minutes of this movie, to be honest. I'm glad you went because then we got to actually watch the whole movie. But I gave this one an 8. I really enjoyed it all the way through. I know we were watching with some other people and they didn't really like it. But I actually do agree with you. I mean, Ben told me from the beginning that I would like this movie, and I think I do. So.
Yeah, and it's sort of, I think that has to do with surrealism versus realism. Surrealism is drawing from the absurd, the it's not realistic, it's not grounded. And when I was younger in movie viewing, I thought that the best mark of a movie was how realistic it was, or a story. and as I've grown, I've started to realize that not all movies have to be based in reality. They can sort of, they're more interesting if you can create these thoughts that are driven by like more abstract thinking. And this movie is by no means an art house film or anything like that, but it certainly is more intriguing than your average movie that you go to the movie theater, or action flick or something like that. Now we get to Message. I will give Message a 7 because I think the message is very interesting, but I detract points because I think the message can get warped by how cynical the movie is.
I was about to say a closely related thing, so I also gave it a 7. So the thing is, like, there's just a lot. So I feel like you could really take out a lot of different themes from this movie, and since it's so like not necessarily interpretive, but like you could interpret a lot from it. There's not like one big central theme, and the movie doesn't need that, but it's like it makes it really confusing in a way.
Yeah, and I think to some people who aren't willing to take the time to dissect what this film means and only take it at face value, the message will definitely not get across to them, because they will just see it as something like, oh, this is just supposed to shock me and there's no point, so like that doesn't seem like a good thing. And some people just like being shocked, and so that will be enough for them. But I think to both of those parties, they're not really gaining the true value of this movie. Like sure, there's shocking elements, but you're supposed to read into the shocking elements, like the criticism of culture and society and how they view high schoolers and how they use high schoolers, and like how JD says at the end that this high school would be society. So it's not just about high schoolers now, it's about like society as a whole, and like how JD is trying to make this huge metaphor for how society works, which well, that's why he's a psycho. He's trying to make a literal metaphor out of people, and he has no feelings towards whether people die, because his whole life is pointed, and he doesn't care whether he breaks his own rules too, because he accuses Ram and Kurt of being of their treatment of women being poor. And then he proceeds to treat Veronica very poorly and very badly, assaulting her in some sections of the film, which is exactly what he accuses Kurt and Ram of doing. So why is he above them? And that's what it's showing. It's like even the critic of society who sees himself as outside is actually just another cog in how messed up the world is. So there's a lot of interesting things like that. But then you can say that like the crudity of how they portray these things can detract from whether you can truly gain a lot of insight from this movie, because there's the shock value that might get in the way. Does that sum it up kind of well?
Yes. Very good. I could not agree less or more. Just the exact amount.
Okay, I gave Plot a 7 because it's a little bit messy.
Yeah, I gave it a 7 too. That's weird. So yeah, it's just like you start out the movie thinking like, oh, it's gonna be a comedy about like how mean these girls are. It's gonna be like another Mean Girls, another White Chicks. Not necessarily White Chicks. That's a little bit different. But
yeah.
Anyway, it's just like it's another high school movie about mean people, and they learn to love everyone in the end, whatever. And then like you don't really figure out it's not about that until Heather 1 dies.
Yeah.
So it's just like the plot, although it's a good twist. Like the movie's taking different directions, partly in the movie is a good idea. But you don't really realize like necessarily like I know Veronica's the main character, but she doesn't feel like it. I don't see her going through something, because she's just like JD in the way of like, oh, I kill people, but I don't really care. So if you think of the story in a flowing manner, then you're gonna be like, oh, the plot is really kind of weird. And of course, we kind of have to do that because it's a movie that's an hour and 40 minutes long. So we got to look at it as a whole. We can't just look at it section by section. And of course, by section, like we could look at the characters in each situation and analyze like what did they learn, what are the specific contexts, like what is it saying about society or about mental health or something like that, or what's the theme. But when you go into like the whole movie, like the whole hour and 40 minutes, and you look at it as like a flowing structure, you can't really say that the plot is like organized.
Yeah.
Did that make sense, Ben?
That made sense. Zach makes a lot of good points here. The movie, I think, does, especially towards the end, like the first couple of murders are very sort of cathartic and like, wow, this is intriguing. And of course, that I say the word cathartic, I think that is the danger of these types of movies. I'm not gonna call it a danger, but like people like that's why people like Quentin Tarantino, because his movies provide like a cathartic ending to people. A lot of his popular films are about revenge.
Yeah, it's like taking an ice bath.
But the catharsis in this movie is sort of around revenge, but like their motives for killing and the way in which they go about killing don't seem justified, and that bothers the audience. But really, you could say, is Tarantino any more justified in his movies? He uses a lot more extreme scenarios that make it seem like he's more justified.
Again, we had a conversation about, we're not going to say what it is, but it was a certain show on Netflix that everybody freaked out about. It was really inappropriate, but it's like we were wondering how far, like how much do you have to show in a movie or a series to get your point across, And
how much will it start glorifying the thing that it's trying to critique,
Yeah.
Because this movie, JD's character is cool. At least to me, he is. Like he obviously turns into a crazy guy by the end, and you're not really rooting for him, but you're not always rooting against him because there's some sort of like charisma that he has. But that's probably, you could also probably chalk that up to being a point. But again, the plot, we're supposed to be talking about the plot, not necessarily the characters. This is what makes the plot so messy, and by the end, I think it's not quite as interesting once we get past the first couple of murders, and it sort of drags on a little bit. But it's pretty good. It's pretty well done. If they would have gotten Stanley Kubrick to direct it like they wanted to, it probably would have been perfect. But Stanley Kubrick also declined this for a reason. So
I mean, I could definitely see why this would not be something that I could see
with that
Kubrick twist.
I actually don't know that Kubrick could. No, he probably could. I haven't seen Dr. Strangelove, but that's a comedy, so he might have been able to pull off the dark comedy, because I think Dr. Strangelove is a dark comedy. I'll have to watch that at some point.
For a second, I was thinking only about Doctor Strange. I was like,
yeah, there's a different movie called Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah, I've actually watched the trailer for that one.
Yeah, maybe we'll do that on the podcast eventually if we do anything Kubrick. Although I've been recommended The Shining, so we might have to do that one first.
Here's Johnny.
Character arcs. I also gave this a 7 because I think they're like decent, but like there's not necessarily a lot of arc. It's more just the characters are interesting.
I gave it a 6 because of what's the girl that gets made fun of?
Martha
Because
Dunstock.
of Martha.
She has the best arc.
She doesn't talk the whole movie, and at the end she says, "I'd love that," or like, doesn't she say that or something?
But that might be what makes her arc so good, is that she doesn't have to say anything for you to understand what her arc is.
I know, that's so true. She's in the gym all alone. She's eating lunch all alone. She hides under the table when they're doing their little rally thing. It's just, I don't know. I felt so bad. Like I know it was.
And nobody in the school, like even the people. That's the great thing about this movie. There was this one character, I forget what his name was. He was a guy. He was always collecting the social events and causes, but his motive was he wanted to get into Princeton. And he even says that during they had this big event where they all got their feelings out, and the media came to that, which was like this teacher, all she cares about is getting publicized and getting attention, and then the media is using this event that's really ridiculous of them just in a room just like holding hands and stuff after the second suicide. It's shown through like the media exploitation. But even this guy's like, he says, I'll need this tape to get into Harvard. So like he doesn't actually care about any of the people that he's like raising charity money for or anything. He's just using that as a way to get his own gain. And that's why Martha Dunstock is the ultimate one who's alone. There's nothing anybody can do with her that will help them. She is. And so they see that, so nobody does. There's literally nobody, even the people who are quote unquote nice in this movie, like Veronica's friend from childhood that she abandoned. She doesn't even make an attempt to be friends with her, and it's Veronica who has to make this realization at the end.
Yeah, I forgot about that character actually.
Yeah,
Betty, I think.
Betty, yeah. She had some sort of name. Like
I
that.
gave it a 6. I thought it was subpar. I mean, it was good.
Are you just talking about cinematography?
No, character arcs.
character
Sorry.
arcs.
I think I said 6, but I'm just thinking like there was a lot there was I don't know. It was like again, it's looking at the movie as a whole compared to like different sections. And I think you can't really give character arcs, especially for Veronica. She didn't 3 people got murdered. She didn't care. She didn't learn anything. It's like Iron Man 1 and 2. I'm sorry, I said it, okay? He doesn't learn anything. It's just how it is, and that's okay. But like I get the themes of the movie, and I get where she came to the realization at the end, and like it became friends with what's her name again?
Martha Dunstall.
Martha. Can't remember that. And she becomes friends with Martha. So I gave it a 6 just for that reason.
Okay, I give cinematography a 7 because I think I give 7. 7 means it did its job and it didn't detract from the movie, and it was slightly interesting. But these movies, it's so hard to judge the cinematography because like there's nothing, like they're not trying to be like.
Well, I would say like the different colors of the outfits. Like everybody in
that's
movie
true.
had like an outfit that was one color, like either a fully green outfit, a fully blue outfit, or red.
The color palette was good. I agree with that.
And then also the scenes with the parents were super symmetrical.
Yes.
Like I don't know why, it was just like right when Veronica got.
I think that's the criticism of the parents.
Yeah.
But yes.
Went up to her parents, like every time, like her mom was on the right, her dad was on the left, and then like even when they're inside sitting on the couch watching television.
They had 2 couches too, facing towards each other, which was weird.
And the one facing the TV was further away than the one that wasn't facing
and the one
TV.
that was closer was like not even facing towards the TV, I think they show, which is odd.
I feel like they set that up in the scene, and the director's just like, I don't care. This is already weird enough.
Wait, what'd you give cinematography?
I actually gave it an 8.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good, and there's not necessarily a lot to talk about, but it does its job.
I mean, I genuinely liked it. Just like I don't know, I haven't seen a movie where like all the colors, like there's an outfit and it's like all one color, besides like the Backyardigans. So like anyway,
the Backyardigans. I gave originality a 9. I almost could give it a 10, but I feel like it's drawing. This movie is supposed to be anti-John Hughes. So John Hughes created this sort of. I mean, you can see shades of The Breakfast Club sort of in this, like with Bender. Bender gives these massive monologues on why high schoolers are terrible and these cliques form and everything. And you're supposed to be like, oh, this is them breaking the clique. But the ending is a lot more optimistic than the ending of Heathers. And in general, it's a less cynical approach to high school. And Ferris Bueller's Day Off is even less cynical. I don't even know whether you can say that movie's about high school per se.
It's about Ferris Bueller and his day off.
It's more about his friend actually, but yes. John Hughes created this sort of like image of high school that some people found not realistic, even though people did see themselves in some of the characters. And so this is supposed to be like the opposite of that, like the cynical John Hughes. You can see the elements of John Hughes, and so I can't give it a 10 because obviously it's drawing off of some of those John Hughes things, but it is very original in the content of the movie and like the color palette and things like that. There can't be another time. Like the late 80s was the only time that shoulder pads were popular for girls to wear, right?
The Office, Michael Scott wears shoulder pads.
Yeah, but oh wait. Yeah, that is good.
Just in one episode, though.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I gave originality an 8. Again, like if there were to be a dark comedy that came out like this today, it would be different from other dark comedies, but it would be like, oh, it's another dark comedy. Like we can analyze it, we can go through it, but it's been done before. But at that time, I feel like dark comedies weren't as popular. I don't know. Yeah,
that's why it didn't do well in the box office, I don't think. Well, aside from it not being in that many theatrical releases, yeah. I just don't think this would have been a movie that it wasn't. It was a little bit ahead of its time in some ways, so, even though the content was ahead of its time, but that's a scary thing.
So once again, we have to infer what it was like to watch that movie at the time. Like it was original at the time, I'm assuming. So
yeah,
based on contextual evidence, I don't know. So
yeah, although I will say. I didn't know this, but it is. Some people say it's based on, according to the Wikipedia article, that Massacre at Central High was from 1976 was a huge influence on it. But this seems like more of a traditional like slasher kind of movie. But I'd have to watch it to see how much it really draws off of it. But it's not like the first high school like crazy guy coming in and trying to. But there wasn't actually a massacre like of the entire school. But I'm sure they drew on the elements of that.
Yeah.
Let's see. So we're acting. I give acting an 8 because Christian Slater and Winona Ryder are, I think, really good. Some of the writing is good, but I think sometimes the lines didn't necessarily do the actors favors. But like the actors are sort of give off this like exaggerated, clicky sort of dialogue, and the parents, like everything's sort of exaggerated. Even Christian Slater's like, "Oh, chaos killed the dinosaurs, dear," sort of weird voices. I mean, I think he sort of talks like that, but it's more exaggerated in this movie. So everything's more exaggerated, but it's good.
So here's the thing. I think this is where I diverge a little bit. I thought that it was a little cheesy for the characters. Maybe that's what they're going for, but I gave it a 5.
Yeah, I think that's where we're going to disagree. I say it was cheesy, but that was what they were going for. Where I call it exaggerated, and Zach will call it cheesy. So either way, you could
glass half empty, glass half full.
Yeah, you could probably go either way with it. I definitely understand the issues with it.
It's just I feel like if it was more serious, again, it's a satire. But for me, I could watch someone with serious acting and still get that it's a satire. I don't need them to explain to me that, oh, this is a very eccentric character, so it's a satire, and they're making fun of this, you know?
Yeah.
So I just thought it was like, oh, this acting isn't that great, so I give it a 5.
Yeah, and I think like I watched another comedy satire that's one of my favorites is The Death of Stalin, which is a political satire, and that one has I would say much better acting than this, like on pretty much every level. But it's completely different content, even though it's dark comedy. So style would be 9 is what I gave it, and I think that has to do with the color palettes, like Zach was talking about. Like it's just a very good, interesting style.
Yeah, I gave it a 7. I just thought everything kind of meshed well. It was just like pretty good. Like there are just the movie. I'm stuttering. The movies that come out these days have like really good styles. Like their themes are like I'm gonna make a movie and it's gonna be all about this, you know. Where back then it was like, let's make a movie with this and this and this. And I know like there's Fast and the Furious where they're trying to fit everything in these days, but maybe I'm not getting my point across. But like it's just it fit well for at the time, because whenever I watch a movie that comes out in the 90s or something like that, there's usually a lot of elements that like they don't explain, or it's just like I don't get, and it's never explained, you know? Whereas in this movie, like every little detail means something, you know, in movies these days.
Yeah, you're looking at the colors and you're like, this is a satire.
It's like WandaVision.
This is like supposed to be some sort of critique of society because she's wearing red bow. Yeah.
The fly in the background is Mephisto. Like it's just like WandaVision, you know? It's just like, and I like that these days. I like that a lot. But back then, it's just like I thought it fit well and didn't leave too many things open for movies like that at the time that are older. Again, they're not old. We're not calling anyone old. But for me, yes, it's old because it's before my time, and I think I'm old.
Yeah, and I think there are watching this for the second time. There's parts of this movie that are very predictive, and I think some people who watching it were pretty good at predicting these parts, which shows how predictive they were. But for definitely, I was like, oh, now I can see the implication, like the interactions between Ram and Kurt way before they died. I could see like them foreshadowing, you know, how they were gonna imply their death.
Yeah, like when he shot the gun at them. Like,
yeah,
that was fake, but then he actually does it later in the movie.
Yeah. But not even that, just like their interaction just as characters, what they talked about and things. I could see how that foreshadowed, you know, the suicide note that they would use. But I wouldn't have necessarily picked up on that the first time I watched it. But there can be, this is just more in movies in general. Sometimes I do like when not every single line is just supposed to be for some other part of the movie.
I think we talked about this once.
Because there's a lot of movies that like you're like, oh, this is a throwaway line, and later in the movie you're like, oh, that wasn't a throwaway line. But sometimes I'm like, sometimes it's just interesting to just have characters talk about strange things that really don't.
Like in Donnie Darko, they have a lot of conversations.
Donnie Darko
random.
And Quentin Tarantino movies.
What did they talk about in
like,
Donnie Darko? That was
like Smurfs, and they talk about.
That was really inappropriate, but that was a really good conversation.
Yeah, he'll have like weird philosophical rants and stuff. Like Donnie's like that edgelord kid. He reminds me of JD, except for he's not like, he doesn't want to kill people, you know. But he's like way more intelligent than like everybody gives him credit for, and he like has all these deep thinkings. But he's really an angsty teenager at the end of the day. You know, that's why I like Donnie Darko, because it like people have said like Donnie Darko is my favorite movie, and sorry if I'm talking about it, but like people have said Donnie Darko is like not actually that deep of a movie, and it just tries to be, and it throws in the whole complicated time element thing. But like I really don't care because the atmosphere it creates is like so, intriguing, and that was also in the 80s, although it was more retroactively in the 80s than this movie. So maybe there's something just about that late 80s time period that I like, that both of these movies were able to utilize.
And which, again, we're inferring from because we weren't there.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because it's like they, even though I don't understand all of the references, I understand some of them, but like, people like Madonna and that song Teenage Suicide, Don't Do It. Like, those aren't things that like I really know a lot about. But like I can still understand how important they were in the lives of teenagers and, the way they use them in the movie.
Yeah. And imagine like your kids listening to music from the 2000s. Again, it's a wide range of the 2000s. There isn't like a theme, whereas you could listen to a song and be like, oh, that's from the 80s. Like they're probably like the 2010s maybe, if I were to say, or
well,
the 2020s.
I mean, 2010s were when the hip hop took over, and then but like like what other than hip hop, what can you say was the thing, like 80s? It just seems like there's like a lot, and maybe it's just because we know the past and we know what people still like and what's good now.
Yeah, like 90s rap.
Yeah, 90s rap, 80s, Michael Jackson, Prince, or you had the new wave movement that we've talked about a couple times on the podcast with like Duran Duran and Tears for Fears and people like that. Like those are things that people remember. That now they use.
What are we gonna remember now?
That's
One Direction.
But I think that we don't necessarily know what's going to be remembered. But in 20 years, when we're looking back, it'll make sense. That's how nostalgia works.
Yeah, that's weird because your kids, the next generation, will be like looking back and being like, wow, I feel like I knew what it would be like to live in the 2000s.
Yeah, because these movies are the things that invoke like, oh, this is what the 80s was like, and it gives it sort of this magical feel since we didn't experience it. But so it's different than a nostalgic feeling that people who actually lived in the 80s will feel because they know what it was like to have lived in the 80s. We don't, so all we know is from these movies, and they sort of stir up this like, whoa, the 80s were this like cool time, and our parents who actually lived in the 80s will probably be like, well, it wasn't exactly that cool, like there was a lot of stuff that was sort of not.
Wars and different things.
And the movies always glamorize things, even when they're trying to be critical of them. In the case of this movie. But we're really dragging on that note. What were we even talking about? Style?
Yeah.
Did you say your score for style? Yeah, 7, you did. I gave the soundtrack an 8, and there's not a whole lot to talk about. It's just a solid soundtrack.
I thought it was okay at best, so I gave it a 6.
I think I let Alec talk me into it, liking it more. So
I just all I heard in the background was beep boop beep boop beep boop.
That's true. It was a traditional 80s soundtrack, but maybe it was a critique of 80s soundtracks. That's what I'll say.
it's a meta.
Everything can be leveled up because it's a criticism.
Maybe this criticism is a movie. Maybe this movie is a criticism about movies that criticize.
Yeah. So it's like sort of a meta
criticism.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
A criticized meta criticism. Whoa. Okay.
We really like things that are meta. And finally, I gave choreography an 8 because I loved all of the like. I count choreography as all like the deaths and everything, and and like the police in this movie.
So
like, we talk about them, they're so stupid, and like the people running through the woods look ridiculous, and everything's exaggerated, and I love it. And Zach's probably gonna hate it.
No, I gave it a 7.
Oh, okay.
It was okay.
You didn't hate it.
I mean, I don't love it. I'm gonna be honest. I don't.
Maybe I'm over emphasizing a few parts that were good, but like that's all I can do with this movie because I like it. So I probably gave it the benefit of the doubt more than I did.
People got shot. People were chased in the woods in their underwear. I mean, there's choreography, so I'll give it a 7.
Okay,
that brings my total to a 69.
How appropriate.
It's meta.
It's meta. And I gave mine an 80, so that puts it, what is that, like a 74 or something between us?
Yeah.
So I'll try to do better at saying what our so I gave an 80%, Zach gave it a 69%, so our official movie vault score is a 74%, because we always even each other out, because Zach tends to rate lower and I tend to rate high, so then we get the perfectly, even score. Mm-hmm. We balance each other out.
74.5.
We really 74.5. I'm not really that good at math, if you haven't noticed.
It's
from
okay.
the rest
I'm
of the
so
show.
tired. It took me that whole time to think
All right, Britta moments with Britta.
Perry.
So there's probably a lot of plot holes in this, really. just because it's
Heathers.
like the funeral scenes, like why were there 3D glasses, and most of it has to do with like what was a dream and what was real. This isn't like like 8.5, which is a movie that you really can't tell whether scenes are dreams or real that easily. I mean, you can, but it's just the way that they go back and forth is weird.
Why was that? Why were they at the funeral? Why were they?
There's
got to
be some reason that 3D, like there's got to be some like
meta 3D out of their 2D that we're watching.
Like there's got to be some criticism that they were going for or something. Obviously the first time the pastor was like blaming everything on MTV and video games, which is like super cliche, and like what they would have been like, oh, these MTV commercials, they're ruining our kids.
Now the pastors these days are like, hey, did you guys get the new Call of Duty?
Oh, we should play Call of Duty together sometime.
It's so funny how things change, even though we've only been in the change. But like we know what they
were
before.
I mean, I get this is an interesting conversation about like technology and nostalgia, because like technology is like, okay, so now we've had video games and they're kind of graphic and whatnot, but we've trying to decide like, okay, these aren't what directly causes people to like act out societally in these ways.
Yeah, I had an adult, like I'm sort of an adult, but I had like a real adult tell me that like the stuff that you guys see these days, I would have been so scared when I was little, but like we're all like kind of desensitized.
That's the thing. But now we're gonna move into VR, and that will up the level of realism of everything.
Especially like when we get into Ready Player One type of stuff, where you can like feel stuff and like it can hurt you, and like,
and then that can be like, it can sort of be like, okay, so maybe we haven't reached a level where like it's pushed over the line, but maybe the desensitization will lead us down. It's like a slippery slope. Like we're on the slope right now, and we're gonna get to the place where it really does sort of like mess us up, because living in a virtual world, like regardless of what we're doing in it, just seems like it will be like a sort of a drug, and that's sort of what video games can be. That's more of the danger, I would say, than even just the violence. Is just like the level of stimulation you can get without actually accomplishing anything, which you can say of literally everything. I could say like movies, like watching a bunch of movies could give me like this stimulation of like I'm accomplishing all of this, but I'm really only like consuming media. So I'm not saying like I'm outside of this criticism. I'm just saying it's something that you can see from this movie.
You're another cog in the wheel.
Yeah, just like I said about something else earlier. JD thinks he's special, but he's just another cog in the wheel, just like me. I think I'm some special podcaster, but I'm really just another cog in the giant wheel.
The giant online media wheel.
Yeah. That's driven. We can always blame it on who's driving it, but maybe nobody's really driving it.
Let's just blame it on the CEOs.
It's just decentralized. It's just decentralized. Nobody really knows who's controlling it or anything.
Yeah. All right. So I guess we could just say that this whole movie had like an overarching Brita moment throughout, and there wasn't like, it was like Brita moments were like weaved in and out of this movie, because every scene was like basically changing the theme of what was trying to be criticized. Yeah. Like, you can't look at it as a whole, as I was saying. Like, you have to look at it piece by piece. So I mean, Brita moments would have been in those transitions from those different themes. So anyway, let's move on to the stock market. Who would you invest in?
Well, I probably would have invested in Winona Ryder and Christian Slater.
You would have, or wouldn't have?
Because they go on to have successful careers. But
we don't know
I
that.
wouldn't have necessarily picked it up from this movie, though, because it wasn't successful.
So
to be honest, I probably would have lost. I probably would have been mad at myself for not investing in the people, because that's probably what would have happened.
Yeah. No, I agree. I really wish, because Winona Ryder, like, Will's mom, what is her name? I forget. Mrs.
But she's really good in Stranger Things.
Yeah, she's like really good.
And I don't even think,
especially in season 1. Like, she's overlooked in seasons 2 and 3, but in season 1 she's really good. Like, when her son goes missing in the first couple episodes, she's so distraught, and she's like a hero in it,
And I think that like you could even like Stranger Things obviously is the best thing she's known for now, but like she was in Beetlejuice before this, which is a Tim Burton movie. She was in Martin Scorsese's Age of Innocence. Which I don't think was necessarily super popular. But, she was in, Star Trek. So, yeah, Stranger Things probably her biggest thing.
Yeah, she's in the Hollywood Star.
So she would have been a slow grow. But I think, like, she's a big name. Like, people would recognize Winona Ryder. And they would have recognized her for a long time. She was in, like, being John Malkovich, a lot of really interesting movies.
She's in Alien Resurrection.
Wow. Now that's the one that you want to be known for being in. She's in Black Swan too. Darren Aronofsky. Whoa, he's weird. weird
Oh,
director.
she was in The Simpsons, apparently. But I guess every actor in Hollywood has been on The Simpsons.
Yeah, it's sort of like Wes Anderson movies.
So now that we know that we would have lost out on all of our investments because these people weren't amazing in this, but would have been like amazing in the future.
I want to know what Christian Slater. Well, Michael Lehman probably is not the. He like really Heathers is the best thing he's known for. I think he directed a lot of TV, on popular TV shows, but just like TV directors don't generally get as recognized. So I wouldn't consider that great stock, even though he worked on good TV shows. It depends on how you're looking at things. Yeah. Christian Slater was in The Office
Just for like a
for a cameo, yes, which is
like
what
a
I
Saber commercial.
which I thought was hilarious because he talked sort of like he did in this. Yeah, Christian Slater. Well, he's in True Romance, which is a Quentin Tarantino written film, not directed. Zoolander,
Igor.
Like El Gringo. I'm just kidding. That would probably not be that famous of a movie. No, but he's just been in a ton of stuff, and he's a known name, so probably would have been worth.
I mean, I've heard the name. Like if the name's out there, he's making money.
Yeah, that's sort of what matters in Hollywood is your image, which is okay. That's another societal criticism you could bring up. Did we get any feedback? We got some feedback on the Fast and Furious episode, right?
Yeah, Brian emailed us again. Thank you, Brian. I mean, yeah, we've had some people tell us recently that they like it. That's really it. I mean, hopefully we get some more feedback once we do some more YouTube stuff, because that's more of the interactive type of stuff that we can do.
Yeah, you can comment on it and stuff, and we're doing our Wanda. Do we want to say we're doing our WandaVision review? So that should be up. Maybe
full series.
It might actually already be up by the time this gets released. Hopefully,
so.
And if not, it will be up very soon.
Yep.
So final round in conclusions. This movie will make you like raise your eyebrows a couple of times, but ultimately it will give you a lot to chew on.
And if you don't want to chew on it, then spit it out. But for those of us that love to chew, not tobacco, but movies.
If you're a deep thinker who likes to laugh, this is for you, and you don't mind a little bit of like a inappropriate at times and dark humor, then you'll greatly enjoy this.
Yeah. And I think that's really, I think we literally, in the first 10 minutes, like, encompassed what this movie represents. So I feel like how I feel, I don't really feel anything about this movie. I mean, I like it a lot, and it means a lot. It means a lot to me. But, like, it's just, like, what it represents is themes, and whether or not those themes are important to me is personal. So
yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so next week we have a guest lined up. We're really excited about it. Don't even know that I've told Zach who it is.
I actually don't know.
So yeah, that'll be cool. Hopefully that all works out. But until next week, it's time to close the vault.
Ben, have you closed the vault in a while?
I have not. I have not had the pleasure to.
Okay. Well, it's now time to close the vault.
Hey Zach, do you want a slushie?